that you. Hi, Angela. She's like, I'm not talking to you. Angela, you're missing all the great conversation about the Mojave Desert.
All right, sounds nice.
She's like, I don't. Mojave Desert.
I do.
It is beautiful. The desert has its own beauty, you know?
It's very quiet. I thought I knew what a desert was because I lived in Tucson for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But then I went to Peru and the deserts there is no vegetation at all.
Yeah. It's crazy. That's neat. That's next level. My husband spent some time in Peru after he graduated from college. But he like backpacked through it.
So that's-
And like, there's just a lot of stories like where he almost died. And I was like, oh man, that's rough.
You didn't?
Yeah, I was like, I'm so glad you didn't die.
Yeah, everything was successful. She had so much stuff. Oh my gosh, we have to go over and make another trip.
All right, and it's Josh that's joining us, right?
Yes, that's my.
Is he joining us through team, through?
Yes.
Okay.
So through Zoom.
All right.
I could have stayed home.
Well, now, if you want for future meetings, you can always join via Zoom, but it is nice to be in person. Sometimes, yeah, it's nice to take meetings in your pajama pants. All right, well, welcome everybody in the Zoom. Let's see, we have Angela, we have Vicky, we have another Angela, two Angelas, we'll buy a lottery ticket. And then Jeannie James, she's connecting. Hello.
Just saying,
Awesome.
it says that the link isn't working, so I need to.
Oh, do you want to send him another link? We are waiting for our speaker, but welcome to Pat. So glad. I don't think you guys can see me. I'm just a disembodied voice on the
You
thing.
have another link.
It's just that same link, but let me get it. So welcome to Pat. Let me just do one technological thing. And then we can go ahead and kind of get started. Let me see. Oh, the link does work. Okay. All right, let me do this really quick. Zoom. What is a day without technological difficulties, huh?
Rare day.
Oh, yes, a very rare day. Like last week, my headphones just wouldn't connect. Just wouldn't at all. I don't think because we started the meeting. Yeah. Here we go. Boom. Okay. And now I'm gonna Teams it to you really quick, okay?
Okay.
You don't mind.
All the multiple windows.
I know, and my computer is not
The connection's a
a,
little slow.
not a great computer. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Boom. Right? Okay, awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, this is PAAT. So PAAT stands for our Peer Advisory and Advocacy Team. So we are a group of peers with lived experience with mental health, and we meet twice a month just to share different resources in the community. And sometimes we have an open mic just to talk about how you're doing. Yeah. So this month, this first meeting is we will be having the Central Coast Autism Spectrum Center speaking to us about what is autism, how you can get diagnosed, things like that. We do have a meeting on the 20th, and that is an in-person meeting here at our main office, and it's potluck. We'll be providing some pizza just to kind of get to know each other, spend some time, just a celebration of the beginning of summer. Although I will say it doesn't really feel like summer here in SLO County because it's been kind of cold. But I live in Los Osos and it's just been wall to wall fog. So I enjoy that. And then here on the 24th, we will be having a presentation from Cal Able, which is for those of you that receive SSI benefits and meet those disability requirements. It is a savings account that will not affect your benefits, a savings investment account. So I am super excited to hear about that because we work with a lot of people who struggle with that kind of requirement, and the ability for them to save just in case something happens is amazing. So we'll be having them on the 24th, and they will be coming via Zoom to speak with us and do their little presentation. And if you are interested, please come back. We'll be sending out other notices. I think we sent out via Facebook and the email. So you'll be using the same channels to spread the word about that meeting, so you can join us there. All right, very good. We are still waiting for our speaker, having a little bit of technical difficulties. Like we said, what would a day be without technical difficulties? So we're just gonna go ahead and do a nice little grounding exercise. We're gonna do some box breathing. For those of you that don't know what box breathing is, it is we breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and then hold for 4 again. We'll do about 3 or 4 cycles of that. It really just kind of helps us clear our mind, ground us, get some air into your lungs and some oxygen to your brain. Once again, though, this is a choice. And so if you don't feel like doing that, perfectly okay. That is fine as well. So I'm gonna take a drink of water because my throat is getting dry, and then I'll go ahead and lead us in some box breathing. Very good. All right. So if you would like, you can close your eyes and just feel your feet on the ground. Kind of sit in a relaxed posture. And then once again, we're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and then hold for 4. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. One more rotation, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. Thank you so much for breathing with me. Really appreciate that. And then Joshua Russell, are you our speaker?
That is me. Hi.
Awesome. All right, Josh, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make you a co-host so that you can share.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. And so then if this is Joshua, he's our speaker, and I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Joshua, okay?
Sure. Sounds good. Let me get my slides up so that everything's kind of ready. This should be it. My name is Joshua Russell, as you so lovely shared. Can everybody see that okay? Is it looking okay? I
Yes.
lost wherever I was supposed to be seeing you. Thank you for the audio. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm gonna try and just make sure I have weirdly sized screens. Is it still look fine?
It is a little bit small.
Yeah, it's a little small. Okay, I know what to do. I'm just gonna switch it and then we'll make it work. Give me just one second. So yeah, I'm Josh Russell. I work for a school. It's like a virtual homeschool, but I work on the special ed side. So we're doing a lot of meetings online with kids and K-12 and all that kind of stuff. I've been working as a speech therapist for about 9 years now. It's getting up there. It's kind of crazy. And it's just been like such a joy. I love this world. Like the disabilities world is so interesting, and I feel like I get it. So I don't know. It's just my favorite people are in this community. So I'm just glad I found them. So, all right, I have that presentation now. This should work in the right format. Can everybody see that now?
I can see it.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. Thank you so much. All right. So neither of these people is me. That's okay. These are our director of the Central Coast Autism Spectrum Center. That's Carly Spears. She just had her second baby, and they're just both beautiful. So she does a ton, but right now she's doing a little bit less, and we want her to do even less because she does too much. She's incredible. She's one of the best advocates for people with autism I know. She's phenomenal. And then Berlinda also is just one of the most incredible people I've ever seen work with people with disabilities, especially autism. The three of us worked together at Arroyo Grande High School just a couple of years ago. And so that's how I met them, and they invited me to be part of the center. And I love it here. I've only been here about a year, but it's a great group, and we're making lots of different activities for people to do. Kind of my role there, even though I'm a speech therapist, I try not to be a speech therapist there, just because I'm just a guy. I want to create opportunities for people with autism, and so I love D&D. I like fantasy stuff. I started a D&D club, and we all get together and do that. So that's kind of the main thing I do, and then help out with events. We have lots of events. We did the Crawtism Crawdad Boil just a couple weeks ago. That was super fun. We did the Walk for Autism a couple weeks before that. We're gonna do a fundraiser in the fall, and all these different things. We're always trying to just keep things going and busy, and have opportunities for people to go and enjoy each other. And our mission is to strengthen the quality of life for people. A lot of people with disabilities, this world was not built with them in mind, unfortunately. So life could be pretty hard. So we want to strengthen the quality of life, make sure everyone receives equity. These are our members of the board. I'm there at the very, very bottom. And I think I'm the most recent one. But we have a bunch of people here, parents of people with autism, people who have autism themselves, people who just work in the field, all that kind of stuff. This is our board. And we do lots of different social programs. So yeah, in the summer too, we have a very cool one coming right up. It's in a couple weeks, where if you know families who are interested in coming and hanging out and doing arts and crafts and music and just being sort of outdoors, we have a summer camp every year at Camp AG. It's just down in Arroyo Grande, and it's a blast. It's so much fun. I brought my instruments last time, and everyone just seems to have a really good time. So. Okay, let's keep on going here. So, some quotes. For too long, we've assumed that there is a single template for human nature, which is why we diagnosed most deviations as disorders. But the reality is there are many different kinds of minds, and that's a very good thing. I believe in this wholeheartedly. I remember, I like science and medicine and all those kinds of things. So I like to study all that, and I did some anatomy classes and studied just the history of medicine and all those things. And I remember learning from my teachers that, there was a time where people looked at even the woman's body, right, as deviant from the norm, right? They looked at sort of the man's body and they said that is the way that humans are made, and anything that's different from that is a disorder or deviation. And so, of course, things that women deal with in their lives that are perfectly valid got put off to the side, right? This happens all the time with humans, is we find these majorities that seem to work for most people, but then a lot of people get left off to the side, and it's just too bad. There isn't a single template for human nature. There's many different ways to be a human. As we know, there's all sorts of different cultures and shapes and sizes across the entire world. So I think it's really nice that I get to live in a world nowadays where people we're accepting many different kinds of people. Being autistic is one kind of way to be a human. I love that we're kind of understanding that, beginning to. And it also shouldn't be seen as a burden or a superpower, right? A lot of people like to make a big deal about people with disabilities making their way through their lives. I just did it a couple seconds ago, right? But if I'm talking to somebody with a disability, they don't want my pity, right? And I try not to bring that pity. I try to bring the joy and hey, look, I'm a guy with a certain set of skills that, hey, if you got needs, I can help, right? Not everybody needs those things. I remember, at the D&D club, we were just doing, or we've been going for about a year, but we just met a couple weeks ago, and a couple of volunteers had come from Cal Poly, and it was so interesting because they were excited to volunteer, the young ladies, and just wanted to be part of the world, but they came in sort of expecting to help, and we didn't have anything for them to help with. The D&D stuff is just a bunch of people hanging out, so I just invited them to enjoy the time with us, and they seemed, pleased. They didn't have to do too much work or anything like that. But I think that's kind of a great attitude to enter in with anybody you don't know, is just try to enjoy them, right? Why are we trying to help people if they didn't ask for it? I have a video for you. I'm just going to check in with everybody and make sure I'm still with you. Yep, okay. So this video is great. I love it.
Imagine a town full of physically impaired people, all wheelchair users. They run everything. There aren't any able-bodied people, so naturally, when they built the town, the community decided it was pointless to have ceilings 10 foot high and doors 7 foot high. So the ceilings were built at 7 foot and the doors at 5 foot. In every way, they designed the place the way they wanted it. One day, a few able-bodied people come to stay. One of the first things they notice is the height of the doors. And the reason they notice is because they keep hitting their heads. They come to stand out by the bruises they carry on their foreheads. Soon doctors, psychiatrists and social workers all become involved. Committees are formed. Many people are worried about what becomes known as the problem of the able-bodied. Throughout the town there is a growth of real concern. Specially toughened helmets are handed out, free to the able-bodied, to be worn at all times. Braces are designed which give support and relief, while keeping the able-bodied wearer bent to normal height. Various groups of compassionate wheelchair users get together and form registered charities. Every quarter they have a collection day. Upturned helmets are left in pubs and shops for people to drop their small change into. There is talk of founding special homes. But then one day, it dawns on the able-bodied that there is nothing actually wrong with them, just that society excludes them.
There we go. Yeah, I love that video. It's so cute. It must be from a while ago, so these ideas have been cooking.
Imagine a
oh, sorry.
town full of physically impaired people.
Just want to advance. There we go. So yeah, I think so much of this stuff is about fit rather than ability, right? I know when I was growing up, I remember it just being a very important thing to people that people be intelligent, right? If you weren't intelligent, then it was seen as bad and you wanted to try to avoid people finding that out about you. But if you were intelligent, it was celebrated and all these kinds of things. But I look at it all nowadays and I'm like, intellect is such a small piece of the puzzle. Like, especially as a speech therapist, I'm all about communication. And I can't say enough about how I think communication ability is far superior to intellect ability, right? Far superior. There's plenty of people in this world that we all know who can talk a fabulous game, even though they don't really have anything to back up what they're talking about. And the reverse, like lots of people know things but have a hard time communicating it, right? This is why in science we have people who hold special roles just to communicate the ideas that the scientists are working on. Things get lost in communication if we don't kind of keep on top of it like that. Right. So, yeah, I just think, it's really important to remember that every single person is a multi-dimensional person. And another thing to know about autism too, many of you probably already know this, but intellect actually has nothing to do with it. It's not one of the signals that we would look for autism, right? If you're looking for somebody who's got intellectual disability, you want to make sure you can get them help. You can give them certain tests to make sure that we understand that they're having trouble with intellect and we want to give them that kind of help. That doesn't come up on autism, right? Autism is a social communication disorder. That's all. It's where people have trouble reading social situations and responding to them. That's really the key. And that's kind of why autism takes up this gigantic spectrum, is because there's lots of people with that difficulty, right? Communication is one of the hardest things we do. It's one of the newest parts of our minds, right? Even our brains, right? Like the part that developed language is way out on the exterior in some of the newest parts that our brain developed over evolution and history and all that kind of stuff. So it's very fascinating. So yeah, there's a wide variety of people who generally have trouble with social skills, but might have really huge strengths in one area, really low weaknesses in the other. It can really, really vary. And so you have some people who are going to need help for much of their lives, and I know that's very stressful for their parents. So many parents I know of people with severe disabilities like that, they worry about what happens when they're going to be gone. Right? What happens when our parents are gone? I think that's a question all of us have to wrestle with at some point. But for some kids, they really need that help. So what happens when that parent's gone? Is there a community to catch them? We really want to, I want to see that, happen. And that's why your guys' group is so fantastic. And I love the work that y'all do. I could definitely stand to learn some more about it. So, I'm curious about y'all's perspectives too. But I know that, helping people live their lives fully and independently is such an important thing because of that sort of passing down thing of parent to child, and not every child's able to take care of themselves. Now, on the other hand, you have some autistic people who absolutely can take care of themselves fine. I know like 4 of them who work for Amazon. it's it's just such a wide range of ability. So wide range of ability. So I want to kind of talk about the different terms in there just to give y'all some new info if you don't have it, or maybe just a refresher on stuff that you do. All the terms do change a lot because autism is kind of in this moment right now in our society where people are beginning to understand it. It's pretty great. So new terms are coming up, things change, it's kind of like the pronouns, people are starting to be more accepting of our society, and so new words are needed to describe those situations. So this is kind of the idea that we got so far, but I guarantee you this will change within the next 20 years. So neurodivergent would be opposed to neurotypical, right? Neurodivergent would just mean anybody who's sort of not normal, right? And anybody who's neurotypical is people who are normal, right? But that's really not helpful for a lot of people who aren't normal, right? It may capture the majority of people, but there's lots of people who get left to the side. So to be considered sort of neurodivergent, it can easily turn into being seen as a bad thing. That's why we have a new word for like people who have a hard time with the world every couple years, right? This changes all the time. So nowadays we're talking more about autistic. And what's interesting is, 20, 30 years ago, no one was asking autistic people what they thought about all this. There's kind of a bunch of doctors making up their own ideas about it. And nowadays we're a lot better at that. I know that nowadays there's a lot of people who were kids with autism during the 90s. They sort of lived through the ways that we helped autistic people during that time. And nowadays they're 20 years older and they're posting videos on YouTube about their experience with the way that they were treated. And it's fascinating because this group of people is now making up words for neurotypical people. So that's where this word comes from here, autistic. Autistic is a word from the autistic community to describe people who aren't autistic, right? Kind of centering the autism, which is an important part of their lives. I think it's really, really important to remember that like just because someone's a minority doesn't mean that they that they shouldn't have agency over their own lives, right? I think that's one of the most important things a person deserves to have is just control over their own lives, to decide what they want to do with it, right? If they're capable. So there's new terms coming in here. I also like to, just use regular language. I think sometimes this stuff gets too technical and people get confused. Sometimes I think it's okay to look at like, maybe neurotypical people are kind of squares. That's an old word that we've used for a long time to describe people who are a little too normal, right? And I think that's okay. I think one thing I've learned about people in the autism community, people who have autism, is that, they don't want to play all the games of like, what do I call it or what do I do? This is a group of people who is already had to deal with enough of adapting to the world around them. So I find that so many people with autism that I know really like honesty and candor, and I think most people in the world do. Nobody wants to feel like they're being pitied or lied to or being treated like a child, right? Treat me like an adult. So yeah, you've seen a lot of this stuff change. It's really, really cool. And most importantly, I think people who have autism are often really misunderstood. A lot of people, autism is having this moment to the point where people are learning about it on Instagram. And I know plenty of people, young people are like, I wonder if I have autism. I have trouble with social situations, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that, I think, is really valid. And another thing about it, too, is that I think people are trying to figure out whether they're in the in group or the out group and for what reasons and all this kind of stuff. So, the fact that it's on Instagram, there's a lot of reasons for people to be engaged in that dialogue, even if they don't have autism, right? So it can kind of, I don't know. I have complex feelings about that world and how it's getting, more common for people to come across this stuff. But definitely, anything you see on Instagram, I would take with a big grain of salt. I think a lot of people are trying to understand themselves and finding identity in autism, which is really cool. A thing that 30 years ago people would have avoided being associated with, right? Nowadays we're really accepting of people. I love it. So what does autism look like? Like I mentioned before, it's really about social skills. It's a social communication disorder. That kind of labels it. If you have trouble with the social skills, there's a good chance it might be autism. It might be related to other things, but there's other couple things that we look for. So when I talk about reading social situations, having trouble with that, right? There's a lot of reasons why a person with autism might have trouble with that. A lot of people with autism have like attention difficulties similar to ADHD, where which that's another one where it's very misunderstood, right? Like we think of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, we think that there's like this something going wrong in the brain. But as we learn more about it, we're actually finding out that ADHD is almost an expression of autism. they're very related. And a lot of that has to do not with how much attention you have or how good you are at it. It has to do with regulating your emotions, right? Can you put stuff to the side emotionally and deal with it later? It's a pretty hard thing to do. I think we all kind of know that experience of being overwhelmed and overloaded. And so like you just want a moment to think, but someone keeps, sending information at you. Like it's a very frustrating experience. You can't understand what they're saying to you because you're thinking about the thing you need to think about because your brain's not done with it, right? You haven't managed it yet. I think that is such a huge part of people with autism. It's why you see impulsivity with autism. It's why you see people say the wrong thing, kind of like foot and mouthitis, is because, the thought came to me and I said it, it's for sort of like impulsive as opposed to sort of wrestling with it and holding it in our minds and putting it to the side so I can deal with it later. That's more of a neurotypical thing of being able to really manage emotions. Whereas autism has a little more trouble usually. A lot of times eye contact comes up. You'll see people with autism kind of look over into the corner while they're talking to you and it seems like they're not looking at you. But actually, or it seems like they're not listening to you or not paying attention, but actually they very well might be. A lot of people with autism find eye contact to be so intense emotionally, right? That same kind of thing of like emotions being overwhelming and filling up my brain and my ability to think. Eye contact is so overwhelming that they couldn't hear you unless they looked away, right? It's a fascinating thing. So if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, is it more important that you understood each other or that he's looking at you, right? Like, I think we can accept that some people aren't going to look right in your eyes when they're listening. That's okay. In my view, I think there's still a lot of growth to have about accepting people with autism and adapting to what they need too, Some other things, light sensitivity and noise sensitivity. This can also be really big. So again, going back to that emotions, managing emotions, executive control. Imagine if the world felt like it was on fire. It's always way too bright, way too loud all the time. Like anybody who's got a teenager, right? Like imagine they're playing metal music at full blast, and you're just trying to drive to get to work, and you're like, I just need a moment for quiet, right? Same kind of thing, but imagine living that your entire life, right? From the moment that you are born on, that the world is so overwhelming that you've got to kind of focus on one thing just to be able to deal with all of that and slowly get used to it a little bit better as the years go on. That's kind of a lot of the things that you'll see that are like the things that show a person has autism, whether it be like hand flapping when you're excited, or it might be a stim, like doing certain shapes with your hand or looking at your fingers in a certain way. These are all different things we call stims. They show up with autism a lot. It's a self-stimulatory behavior, but again, I think that's a pretty negative way to look at it. Lots of things are self-stimulatory behaviors. I sort of chew my fingers and my fingernails. I know lots of people do that. There's no real function for it. It just satisfies a kind of need. It helps me focus on something. It helps me deal with anxiety, right? These are all the different kinds of thoughts that I have when I look at somebody who's like stimming because they have autism, and it helps them focus. A lot of times it can be that. A lot of times it can be something that they can't help but do. Their body wants them to do it. Rocking in your chair, flapping your hands, it could be a number of things. And a lot of the rest of us, the neurotypical folks, probably did this at some point when you were a young kid. But what do adults do? They say, hey, that's not going to be okay when you're older, so stop. And then we all get corrected, but then we all live with anxiety because this whole world seems like it's anxious. You know what I mean? So it's a fascinating thing to me. I think that almost every human I meet could go with people being more okay with who they are. And that especially goes for people with autism. Some other things too, it's hard to fit into a world that's not built for you. It's hard to deal with people judging you before listening to you. So depression, anxiety come up. Restrictive eating, obsessive compulsive disorders, that kind of stuff, all kind of it happens commonly with people with autism. Yeah, and I think, like I said about pronouns, a lot of this stuff can be about just affirming identity. I think a lot of people are resistive to that attitude of like, look, I'm trying to understand myself and I want to communicate about it, right? That's a lot of people are doing that, and I know a lot of people in the world, in our country, are very frustrated with that kind of attitude. But it's interesting. I mean, I have a friend who has a son. She has two sons. One of them has autism, and the other one does not. And for the son who has autism, you can really kind of tell. It's not something he can hide very well, which I think is it has an interesting parallel to like queer life, right? I happen to be a gay man. My husband is lovely. And I find that this experience is extremely similar of like, can people tell that it's going on? Like, what do they think about it? How much do they think about me before do I even tell them that I have that going on in my life? Is that going to make them prejudge me, right? All these things happen in the same space, I think. And I think maybe that's part of why I find it to be a comfy space to work in and things like that. But, I think it's interesting for her son who has autism. She and I went through grad school for the same thing. She's a speech therapist as well. And we were trained, over and over and over again to learn to use person first language, right? A person with autism versus autistic, right? So a person with autism, a person with cerebral palsy, a person with depression. And that was kind of the way we thought about it. It was supposed to be respectful, right? So we're using this language and going through life. And then her son gets old enough that it comes up. He's like, Mom, why am I having trouble with people and social stuff? Like, why does everyone else find it so easy? And that's when she told him, it's like, well, you have autism. It's this thing. This is what, all these things. And so she started using person first language. You're a person with autism, all this stuff. Well, a couple of years go by and he becomes a teenager and he's like, Mom, can you stop with that? You sound old. I don't have autism. I am autistic. It is a huge part of who I am, right? And that's such an interesting thing to hear from people, right? Like, if you want to know what to call people, just ask them, right? They'll tell you what they want to be called, and it probably is different for every single person, right? So, I mean, I think we all kind of take that naturally, right? Like, if someone told you their name was Bob, you wouldn't call them Jane, right? So, yeah, I think people like to be called what they want to be called, and I think for someone with autism, there's a lot of soul searching that goes on in their lives from a very young age, and I think that's part of why I find, autism is a huge spectrum. Every single person with autism is a different person. But part of the reason I find so many people with autism to be so great and genuine and kind is I think these people are familiar with struggle from an early age. When you deal with that, when you've seen and struggled through hard things and overcome them, I think you're naturally going to find more empathy for other people because you see the struggles that they might go through. Whereas I think someone who grows up without much struggle maybe has a hard time seeing that. You know what I mean? So anyway, I really like people with autism. Just ask. All right, so I've kind of been talking about this, but this is really the key thing that I would want to have a takeaway is the deficit model versus neurodiversity model. So deficit model is what we're used to of like the medical thing of like, okay, well, you're supposed to be this, but this thing is different. So we got to fix that and get it back to the way it's supposed to be, right? Going back to the sort of like the medicine for women versus men in the 1800s, 1700s, this would have meant that like, right, like your body is deviant at a base, right? We don't need to be judging people in that way. I don't think we necessarily need to have one core thing that the rest of us compare to. It seems judgmental and unnecessary. Whereas you have the neurodiversity model, on the other hand, which is kind of what we've been talking about here, of looking for all the different ways it is to be human, to try to see a diverse kinds of ways of doing life. That seems so much more interesting to me than everybody fitting one way to do it, right? The deficit model leads to this kind of attitude. And I've been working in schools for so long, I just see people, good, well-meaning people, fall into this habit of treating people as broken. And that's not okay. No, you would not want someone to treat you that way, especially if it's something that's really hard for you that they want you to do, but maybe you don't even want to do it, right? It's just something they're telling you is going to be good for you, right? I try to imagine the mindset of a teenager or an adult or somebody who's struggling to fit in the world, right? Like, yeah, I don't think anyone needs that. So I think there's lots of different ways to talk about it, but I like to talk about a pattern of strengths and weaknesses, right? More or less, that's like a personality. Every one of us has a pattern of strengths and weaknesses that makes us unique when you sum it all up, right? So I think if we can focus on that instead of like what you don't have, life is better for everybody. So the neurodiversity model is just about looking at the person first, understanding that people are different, and trying to see how we can all sort of fit together with those differences instead of trying to cut them out. Difficulties are often contextual, right? You wouldn't want to ask a fish to climb a tree. You don't want to ask someone, you don't want to like say, oh, that person can't write because they're a right-handed writer and you ask them to write with their left hand. This happens in the world all the time. So, context is really important. We talked about this stuff, sort of sensory processing difficulties can be really, really apparent with people with autism. The world can feel a little loud. And then things that you might see, the person do in terms of their communication might be speech and language delays. A lot of times people with autism do have trouble with like the language part of communicating. I think language is a pretty tough thing for most people too. Like not everyone learns to read. So, I think those things can come up, but it's interesting because how do you deal with it, right? I think we all kind of meet someone who has a disability that's obvious, right, in the world, and we want to accommodate them, but we feel awkward knowing how to do it, right? And so we want to slow down so that we can accommodate them, but then it feels like you're talking down to the person. It's very simple. I'll show you kind of the trick. Okay, right? Like I could be like, oh wow, that's crazy. If I met a person, they were telling me a story. Instead, I could be like, oh, that's really cool. And taking these little like chunks in between your sentences, right? You don't have to talk slowly like this. That's going to make a person feel like a child. But if you talk with some pauses in between, everybody hears you better, right? So a lot of the things that you do to accommodate people with autism also accommodates everybody else. I would love it if everybody in this country talked about 10% slower. I think we'd all get the information a lot better and we'd all be a lot less stressed out. Specific and concrete language can be really helpful too, because, let's say someone has trouble with language. They're probably, what kind of vocabulary are going to learn first, right? If you have really a lot of trouble with language, you read these words and you learn these words and people tell you these words, but they just don't stick in your brain. Which ones are you going to remember the most? Probably the ones you run into on your daily life, right? So yeah, that happens a lot with people with autism, is they might not know the word microscope or astronomy, but they definitely know spoon, refrigerator, cooler, all these different kinds of things, mother, father. And it's interesting as a speech therapist, when you go and you look to see what different people have in terms of the vocabulary, is like people who have trouble with language, usually they know the words for the things that matter to them. And that is so important too, is like, right? Like people do the things that matter to them. They don't want to be forced to do things that they don't like, right? If we can diversify the different options for people to live in this life, in this world, then there's lots of different ways for people to fit. If we only have one, then a lot of people are just going to be sort of left out. And it's not a joke to say that some of these people will be homeless. I think we can do a lot more to support the people in our country that have the hardest time. Motor delays can be in there too. A lot of trouble, for some people have trouble with sort of guiding their bodies. You might have a thing called apraxia, right? Is where you might know the words in your head. You know exactly the thought you want to say. You even know how to articulate it. All the sounds. You've practiced it, but you go to send that information through your brain and it hits a part where it just takes it out the wrong way. You went to go say throw the baseball and you ended up saying throw the base bow. And everyone's like, wait, what do you mean base bow? No, I said base bow, right? In this kind of thing where you don't have control over your body, very similar to cerebral palsy, right? If we saw someone with cerebral palsy, we would not want to force them to walk like somebody who doesn't, right? Same kind of thing with autism. And that can show up, very similar things can show up there too. Mood dysregulation, oppositional behavior. This is an interesting one too. We're learning more about it. But oppositional behavior, it's kind of that like, I think, again, we've all met somebody who they're happy to do whatever the group wants to do, as long as they think it's their idea, right? And so you'll see this with some kids where it's like, hey, I want you to take out the trash. No, and, and here's the thing is that it really just depends, whenever we're talking about stuff being part of a disorder, we're talking about it being so much a part of that person's life that it's getting in the way, right? And so there's different levels. Some kid who just says like no to things is not an oppositional kid, but somebody who cannot be in school because every single thing that's part of school is a demand to them, and so they're just going to say no to everything, right? That person's not in the right environment to learn. I've met these kids all the time. Where I met a kid just last year I was working with and trying to get her the right help, and I even asked her name and she said no. But I waited 3 seconds. I was like, okay, no worries. And then she told me her name. It just, there's a certain thing. You got to remember that people have been through things, right? So many kids with autism are born into a world that wants them to be different than the way that they are. And it's really, really hard. So, I think teachers see it a lot of kids being pushed, and you want to see how far can I push this kid to improve in this area without pushing pushing them so hard that it's painful, right? A lot of people, I think adults, just they have good intentions, but they kind of push past that point. And these young kids are trying so hard to get with it. The only way they have control of their lives, get people to stop telling what to do, is to say no, right? And that's where this kind of thing comes from. So there's different names for it that are coming around. Oppositional defiant disorder would have been one. That's kind of growing out of favor. The kind of newer version of this that I really like is I'm losing the words. I'm going to see if I can remember it, but yeah, let me come back to that. But yeah, essentially, there's a lot of this sort of trying to shift the way that we talk about it into a kinder thing. Instead of it being a disorder, we talk about it being a difference. Instead of it being, opposition and defiance, we talk about it of like a drive for autonomy. Yeah, persistent drive for autonomy. So you compare that persistent drive for autonomy. That's a very positive thing. But what we have been calling it for the past 10 years is like a persistent demand avoidance. Right? It's like, is that person avoiding demands, all demands? If you gave them like a pie and it's their favorite pie and you're like, hey, I want you to eat this, they'd probably say yes, right? But like if you hand them homework, no. Anyway, I have a lot of feelings about this. It's an interesting thing. I think we just, whenever I see someone working with someone with autism or being their friend or whatever, I always just want them to kind of just meet that person where they're at. Stop, lose the goals, forget about it. We want to have people get there on their own, develop independence, right? Okay. Neurodivergent communication styles. Oh yeah, a lot of people with autism have these special interests. They might, bring up something that they really like, whether it's like cars or trains or a specific comic book or a specific video game. It might be something that they want to talk about a lot, and they have a hard time sort of letting other people take parts in the conversation and doing that sharing thing. It's a thing called perseveration. Some people sort of get stuck on an idea and they can't lose sight of it. It's sort of like, again, I think we've all seen this in a conversation. You want to bring someone over to this other new thought, but they're still kind of in a certain spot, and you got to let them process right? We all just need to slow down. And then, oh, I lost my share somehow. Let me see if I can pull it back. And then, people with autism may have some trouble with communication. So, the verbal mode, talking with your mouth, is not the only way to communicate. We can sign, we can use devices. We live in this amazing 21st century where you can really, do a lot with an iPad or even sheets of paper in helping people communicate. Stimming, we sort of talked about. The world can feel too much, and sometimes stimming helps you cool down. And again, stimming would be things that you're doing that are like non-functional activities, chewing on your fingernails, pulling your hair, any flapping, hand flapping. Sometimes that stuff really helps a person regulate their emotions. Some people do it for enjoyment, for sensory input. It helps like sort of just calm the body down on a neuro level, right? Neurology level. And and again, maybe just to focus and deal with the stress and anxiety of living. And then, should you intervene? A lot of times, I started out teaching, and people would a lot of times say like, yeah, you gotta get in there. Like the kid's supposed to be learning. You gotta get them to stop stimming so they can focus. And 100% of the time it didn't work, right? I don't know why everyone was still doing that. I think the thing I've learned is that when someone's stimming, just let them stim, get through it. And then they'll probably feel the satisfaction and be ready to learn. This kind of goes back to the same thing of like, I work with so many autistic kids, but like, what about autistic adults? I think the adult version of this is like, so many autistic people could probably participate in big group meetings, but that's a stressful situation. So if you gave them like 5-minute breaks, they could probably do it, right? Here and there. But if you don't, like, they wouldn't even be able to take part. That's a pretty tough thing. So, and then behavior plans, you may see these too, right? This system over here is like a token sheet. And so a person would be learning a skill, but they're having trouble kind of doing the whole thing. It's like, I don't want to do that thing. So you would break it up into steps. If it's like taking out the trash or whatever to make sure that your house is clean, first step is to go to the trash can. So you get a star for doing that. Second would be to grab the bag and tie it up, and the third would be to take it outside of the trash can. So you earn your 3 stars, then you get the thing you were looking for. This is a great way to build up skills for people's different abilities. And a lot of times, it's kind of it's the same thing as getting paid to do a job, right? Like, I'm going to get paid at the end of 2 weeks, so I'm going to do the stuff I hate doing, but I'm going to get the reward later. This is another version of the same thing. For people who have trouble with learning complex skills. And yeah, almost every family does it different too. So like, you might see stuff that looks the same, but always important to ask. And then this is the world of AAC. I kind of had prepared these slides for some guys over at Cal Poly. So I'll just go through this stuff quick, but there is an amazing array of communication devices, everything from paper and, word icons that you hand people to communicate, to eye tracking devices, and just using your phone for, like copying written information, all that kind of stuff. I mean, tons and tons and tons of information. I'm really excited, or options. I'm really excited that we live in the 21st century where this stuff's available. Yep, hearing aids, cochlear implants, physical communication. Like, some people have such a hard time with language that they really just need to learn a word based on how it feels, or if they're blind, right, you wouldn't be able to see these objects, so you might have to start learning them by feeling them, right? Really interesting, all these different ways that people communicate. There's a lot of different principles behind AAC. Most of it's about, communication's a two-way street. I think, again, I only bring this up again just because I think it's a good basis for all communication. Is like, what's the point of communication? Are we trying to get information and harvest that information so that we can use it to make money? Or are we doing communication so that, like, everybody enjoys each other and gets to know each other better, and we just express ourselves as human beings? I think these are important things, right? So a lot of that is about, anytime you're communicating with someone, if you want them to be able to communicate better, if you want to improve their participation, right? Meet them where they're at. Give them extra time. Try to make it meaningful, stuff that they're doing every day. If someone's fighting you, there's a pretty good chance they're working on something that doesn't matter to them, right? And then some other stuff there. Here's some resources for if you guys are interested in following up. Lots of different books and advocacy websites and all this kind of stuff to learn more about autism and get more involved. We over here at the Autism Center, like, we love doing stuff and want to grow the program and make it bigger and bigger. So if anybody has ideas or things, like, please bring them. And we always want to, like, collaborate, and just more stuff going on, the better, right? Because if there's more stuff going on, more people with autism can do it. So what do you do if you feel like you might have autism? I meet parents of kids with autism all the time where they're like, oh my gosh, it's so clear my kid has autism. I'm like him. I wonder if I have it too. This is also super valid. I think this happens a lot when I meet a kid with autism, and it's like, oh my gosh, that kid clearly has autism. Let's see, what they want to do, that family needs help with. A lot of times I'll see the parent and it's like, oh yeah, okay. Like, you may have qualified for a diagnosis, but just didn't have the time, you weren't born in the time where that would have been an option. So I think people are learning about it. They're realizing there's these different things where, like, oh, I had a great uncle who collected stamps and never left his house, right? Like, that sounds like a guy who might have had autism and didn't have any community available to him. So, we're trying to change that. And that's kind of the idea here. You guys play a huge part in that too. Again, I want to know more about what y'all do. And I'm sorry I took up so much time talking. But if anybody has questions or anything, let's go ahead and get into it.
I do have some people saying that the mic quality is a little bit dipping, so I don't know if there's anything
Oh no.
to kind of help with that. And then I think, just more local resources about, like, we do have, like, a lot of adults that come in and they're like, I think I am autistic, and I'm like, okay, let's try to get you some more resources in the community. If you have any, I think that would be great. I know you had a list there, and if you could send us that slide deck and we can email it to the people who are attending, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. Yeah. I had thought I was going to respond to there. Oh, well, yeah, and I think, follow those resources, reach out to us. We'll get everybody in into where they need to get going. But another thing too is, like, really easy steps for people who are interested in, like, learning more about if they have autism or how much, or so much or so on. You can honestly just talk to your doctor. Not every doctor is an amazing specialist in here. And I'm gonna switch my headphones in case that helps the audio. Hold on one sec. All right, hopefully that helps. Okay, so yeah, and Bluetooth, you can't trust it. I'm so sorry. I feel like I might have had you guys miss half the thing. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped more. But yeah, you can just honestly just go to your doctor, talk to them. They might not be an expert in autism, so you can, you may want to go see a psychologist or something like that, but I think it's a very worthwhile journey for the people who want to take it on. Any other questions? I saw a hand go up. Yeah, and I'll be sure to send the slides over too.
Okay, and we have a question here in the room.
Okay.
Sorry. All
All right. Right. All right. Sorry.
Let's just do it this way, but I need to mute the TV. There we go. There we go.
Okay, there. So we were able to hear it pretty well over here, and so hopefully we'll be able to send a recording of this, and so that should help anybody who wasn't able to hear very well. But I have more comments than anything, really. I didn't want to interrupt everything, so. But one thing that's really interesting is eye contact. The US over here, we're pretty big on eye contact, and in other cultures in Africa and such, it's insulting for children to look in the eyes of their elders. They do not look at their eyes, and in other cultures, like Japan or China or what have you, they do have eye contact, but a lot of Westerners, it's still a little too direct. It's one of those things like where, like in Latin America, people will stand closer together than here in the US. So a lot of us so need to step back a little bit. And then people in Asia or what have you, we're still a little too close and we need to step back a little bit. So yeah. And
1,000.
one thing is I have chronic migraine and I've had it since I was age 5. And so I know a lot about this stuff like light and sound and such. So yeah, I relate a lot to that, and I'm left-handed. So it's like, oh yeah. So but yeah, it is really great hearing everything because there's a lot of misconceptions about autism and how wide everything has gotten where in before it was a small selection of qualifications, and now it's a lot bigger. And so I really thank you for taking your time out. And I see so many activities you guys are doing all the time. And so I've sent coworkers that different stuff. And so it's just really great to see like constantly new stuff popping up from you guys. So yeah, that's it. We have questions.
I can't agree enough with everything you said. This is fabulous. My mother, she has severe migraines. She still deals with them and depression. And this stuff can be debilitating. A lot of people are dealing with this stuff and the rest of us just don't even know because they're getting by, right? No one wants to be treated with pity. Everyone wants to live their life and do it the best they can with the most independence, right? And yeah, it's interesting too what you say about the cultural aspect. Autism has sort of come out of the Western world, like the study of it, the name, all that kind of stuff. And so you still only really see it studied really well in Western countries like Great Britain and America and Australia. And so, that's where I get most of the new information too. It's fascinating that like I almost think like some cultures don't even see it or something like that. It seems like some of the elements of this come out of a reaction to the way our culture works, right? Yeah, it's really interesting. And for those same reasons you're talking about, where like Americans really love eye contact, we think it's important on a cultural level, but yet at a body level, most people find it uncomfortable, right? It's interesting. Angela.
Hi, my name is Angela. I'm actually a local pediatrician. So I have a lot of patients with autism. My daughter was just diagnosed with autism a couple weeks ago. So this is from a completely different perspective for me. So I appreciate your talk. So there was a lot of good information you gave. I don't know if there's somebody that I could contact with regarding what kind of literature would help for me as a parent, and then any support groups and activities, like how I can get updated or get notifications of any activities so I can help my daughter through this journey.
Absolutely. Fabulous. And thank you for sharing your vulnerability and all that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really important question because, why am I spending so much time talking about neurodiversity versus like the deficiency model is because it really matters the most for parents, right? How do I want to help my kid? Do I want to push them? Do I want to be careful about pushing them so they don't get stressed out? All these different things. Very, very important. And there's a lot of people out there who will tell you that the only way to deal with autism is to push that person to be like everyone else. And I think there's a lot of issues with that. I think some people can take it sort of too far the other way and don't push their kid far enough. So it can be really a hard balance to strike. There's a lot of information out there, and sometimes those worlds are fighting with each other. Like I know right now there's a big sort of political fight going on between, those two camps. There's a lot of people who want to cure autism, even though it's just a different way of being a person. There's a lot of people who want to adapt the world to help people with autism. So yes, please stay in touch with us. So we have a calendar. If you go to our website, I'll make sure you get the links. If you go to our website, you can just sign up for the calendar and it'll send everything to Google. So you always know what's going on. That's one thing. For two, reach out to us. We're sort of like this local community advocacy group. And so we can collectively kind of like group or make sure you get the right resources and that you have context and background. But the other thing too, basically I'm saying just reach out and we'll continue to help you. But just be careful what you're seeing online. I would look for people who are experts in autism to learn more about it. And I can't recommend enough about just trying to meet people with autism where they're at. Try to let them have control over what they want to do in their own lives. And I know that's going to be something you think about and worry about with your daughter all the time. And I think it can be a scary thing, but with community, we can do anything, right? So yeah, please stay in touch and reach out. And again, I'll make sure you have the links. Angela Garibaldi, thank you for mentioning too and letting us know you have autism too. This is fabulous. Showing your teeth is a thing. Yes, smiling, right? Oh, you're the daughter. Okay, gotcha. Very cool. Her child. Excellent. Did I answer your question? Anything else I can?
Thank you very much. Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
I have a question. Mute.
Okay. We have in the room.
Yay. Thank you so much, Joshua. I am also a okay. Can you hear us? Okay. Thank you so much. I also am an employee working at the Hope House Wellness Center. So we do like peer-led support groups. And I was curious just in the part of the nature of like the challenges of autism and like we're struggling with depression and anxiety. Were there any like particular intersections you see of things that can be supportive in terms of mental health support? Any like coping skills that are particularly supportive?
Yes, absolutely. There's a very I'm getting a little echo.
Sorry.
That's okay. There's a wide array of ways to help. One thing I know is that like, okay, so you have this kind of intersection where autism, you have trouble with the social skills that might come from having trouble with some language and communication. And so stuff is a little harder to communicate in the first place. That can really show up in emotions. One of the, like when I'm teaching young kids with autism, one of the main usual like gaps in their vocabulary they'll have is like emotional vocabulary to talk about being angry, feeling sad, feeling all these different feelings because it's just not the way that a lot of people with autism process that information, right? Like they feel overwhelmed all the time, but trying to dissect it into the other versions of like, okay, do I feel nervous or do I feel angry? It might be both, right? That is usually a really hard thing for people with autism to learn. But learning those words and being able to align it with how people are feeling, yourself and other people, can really help you regulate emotions. So especially for young people, I think learning emotional vocabulary is important. I almost always try to teach the word ambivalent, because I think a lot of people in America think you're only supposed to feel one emotion at a time. It's not the case. And I think that can be a huge help. Being given more time to process and operate in the world is a huge amount of help. Like if you just slow it all down, it can go a lot better. I know that it's interesting. I used to work at AG High. Everything was in person, and I met so many kids with autism who had trouble participating in school on a very basic level. COVID happened, so many of those kids went online and they have never been a stronger student, right? It's really, really fascinating. And the same is true. I remember working with a kid for years where I would tell him, hey, you got to make some friends. And he'd be like, why? And I'd be like, well, because you're going to need stuff one day, right? Like, what if you need to move and you're the only person who can move? What if your girlfriend breaks up with you? And he's like, okay, I can make some friends. But I talked to my friends on Discord and I said, okay, but you need to make like real life friends, right? I think I was wrong. I think he has a perfectly fine social life on Discord. So again, like sort of the different technologies we have to accommodate people's need for predictability, control of their lives, authenticity, all those kinds of things, really play to what autistic people need. Time, control, low stress, all that kind of stuff. Predictability. Yeah. Yeah, that's just a short list. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Do you know how much commonality there is between like autism and OCD?
Yeah, they share a lot of the same territory. Yeah. I see obsessive compulsive, right? Those behaviors, that set of behaviors associated with OCD. I see it as different ways to manage things being outside of your control or being too unpredictable, right? I always used to give the example of like old school bowlers. If you guys know like bowlers over the age of 50, they'll do this funny thing because like, it's so hard to get a strike. And so a lot of guys will go and they'll like, I touch my nose and then I got to wiggle my left hand and then I got to do this thing and I'm gonna turn around and then I throw the ball. And if I do all those things, I get a strike every time, right? Whether or not that's true. This is kind of the mentality that I think people get that OCD from, is like, you think about stuttering, right? Which also happens a lot with autism. Stuttering is not a thing that people will have control over every moment of their lives, but the body still gives them room to believe that they can. So that's where you get these sort of like tics and little twinge looks from people who are, it almost looks like they're really stressed out or really managing something, or they need to do something a certain way every time. I think that's where it's coming from. It's like wanting to control things that feel out of control. Right. And that's why I bring that up too. It's like so much of it, of like what I've learned about being a good therapist, is to put all that kind of stuff in the hands, like make the kid feel safe, make the person feel safe, but it's their decisions. They get to decide what to do. If other people are controlling your life, you're going to feel anxious and want to do controlly behaviors, right?
Thank you.
School very bad for neurodivergent. Yep. Threat assessments. Yep. Yeah, this happens a lot of like, at AG High, there's a lot of things I liked about that community. But one thing they did not do well is supporting people with disabilities. They kind of put all of us on one side of campus, to the point where all the other kids didn't want to go to that side of campus or else they'd get made fun of, right? Not the way you're supposed to do it. And yeah, what that leads to, I think, is this, this sort of natural segregation that people do to each other, right? Is you stop knowing about each other and how each other work, right? So yeah, like some kid will come in sick one day and he can't communicate with his mouth, right? He can't tell us that he's feeling sick, but the world is overwhelming him and he does not want to be here, right? That kid started throwing chairs. And so I needed to get in there and help him out and calm him down. And we found out he was just sick and he needed to go home, right? But thank goodness I'm the first person to show up, because if it had been an administrator or one of the CROs, right, this kid might have had a really different experience, right? So yeah, really, really important. Yeah, I know that it's very sort of a political discussion going on right now about public schools and charter schools and different ways of doing the school thing. And I a lot of times I'm a huge believer in the dream of like the multiracial public school. I think that's really cool. But my experience in the past couple years at this online homeschool is it is so good for people with autism. I think they might need something like this. You know what I mean? If your child have a case manager, follow up closely. Yes, I think so much of this and lobotomize them. Yes, that used to happen a lot in the 60s, the 40s and the 50s. So maybe today. Yeah, I think this country doesn't do enough of checking in on people the real way. We like to know everything's okay and move on, right? But we need to check in with people and give them the time to really feel comfortable with us to express what they need, in my opinion.
Okay, any other questions for Josh while we have him?
I love that, Angela. That's a great comment. I have the same thing. I swear, I'm like, for a decade now, I'm like, I got it down to where it's like natural, but like for a decade, I was like, okay, I gotta look for enough time and then look away. Okay, now you can look back and now you can look away. Do you think I was listening to anybody? No, I was very stressed.
And I also suffer with eye contact, and so very much the same of like, I gotta do the right amount so that people don't think that I'm outside the box, and then, but also I'm just constantly like, where do I look? Where do I look? Yes, very stressful.
Yes, yes. I love this stuff, right? So much of autism is something that every single human experiences, right? A lot of us should find this stuff familiar, you know?
That's why it's so great that it's a spectrum, because it is like a lot of this incorporates just in normal everyday life. It's like, yeah, we all have habits and routines or things that find me comfort, and stemming. Everybody has a stemming type of activity, whether it be like shaking your knee up and down or things like that. It is all relative. And I like what you said specifically about like, we just need to understand each other more in order to build like that gap of like not segregating, not being sneeches, but rather just building community together to help each other grow.
I love it. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for speaking to us. Oh,
Angela's back, so maybe she might be like.
Oh, hi, Angela. Did you have a question?
No, but thank you for letting my daughter attend. She is on the she's definitely autistic on the spectrum, and she was sharing her thoughts over the text, and I really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
It was great hearing
Love
from her. Thank you.
Yeah, that lived experience angle is so important, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we do have this on a recording, and so we will be, making this available on YouTube. We'll probably post a link and send that out via email. If you would like to be on the PAAT emailing list to get any other further meetings, you can drop your email in the chat. And like I said, our next meeting will be in person. It's a potluck just to kind of gather here on the 20th. We will be providing pizza from Fatty's specifically. And then the 24th, we will have another hybrid meeting, both on Zoom and in person, talking about CalAble. For those of you that do receive SSI benefits, we can, now you all have access to an investment savings account to really help kind of prepare for those emergencies. And that it's not going to count towards that $2,000 maximum that you need or have. So that is a wonderful tool for a lot of people that we either work with or we help in the community or our parents or anybody, because that was a big barrier. So excited about that. Once again, thank you, Josh. And then I'm going to send a movie recommendation your way to kind of speak a little bit about how the Western world kind of views mental health.
I want to tell you about the baby kitty.
Yes, please.
They know you have a kitty.
I
talk
want to tell
about
them
it.
about the big
We talk
kitty.
about it all the time.
The
So,
kitty, the cat.
Oh, you have a cat? The kitty.
No, they want to hear it. They find it here. Okay, so baby kitties. No, mom, no.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And like I said, we'll be sending this out, and then Josh, I'll send you that movie recommendation so you can have a little bit more of experience with mental health and how the Western world views it as opposed to the rest of the world.
Yes, please.
All
Love
right.
it. Thank you all for having me, and please stay in touch.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody else have a wonderful day. And Angela, we got your email and we'll be adding you to the list for our future meetings. Thank you. Bye.